That was the goal.
When you first start getting into your niche, and you start putting your portfolio together, you can let your creativity or your creative mind run riot, and you can do pretty much whatever you want. But then when you start working with clients, they very often have very specific ideas. What were some of your biggest challenges when you started working with clients?
It's probably approval process. Usually it goes really smoothly, but there are instances where it won't. And I I mean, I feel very lucky to work with some amazing clients, but in the early days, I would say that a good portion of my contract is created by hard lessons that I learned with clients. And one of some of the biggest hardships in working with clients can be the approval process. And, as it's your job as an artist or a photographer to deliver something that the client wants and needs. But it's also important for you as an artist to realize that some clients can be wishy-washy, and they can they often don't have a clear idea of what they want what they want basically. And so when you deliver something that was discussed and they said, "Oh no, you know what? Maybe we should change it to this." That can be very painful period, especially when you think that your concept has been approved. So, I mean, that leads to things in the contract like I will do this many revisions. After that, it's going to cost this much. And if there's any changes that come after I've begun photography, or especially after I've completed photography, that could require, well, that's going to require more time, and it could actually require a completely new setup and shoot. So, double the rate right there if that's what you're going to ask for. So it's really about setting expectations. And again, I've learned some really hard lessons because I have except for general photography, what I've done, I really didn't have any guidebook to follow since nobody was doing this before. But it's been a learning process. There's been some pain, but I would say the joy outweighs the pain by a million times. Just because, again, most of my clients are amazing, and I've gotten to the point where, and this is not something that I could have done in wedding photography, but I've gotten to the point where I can kind of pick with who I work with. Like, typically, the clients will approach me because they know what I do, they know who I am, and if it's not a good fit, I won't. I'm not shy in saying, I really am appreciative that they came to me, but I feel like perhaps this other person might be a better fit for you. But I certainly will say that I don't think that I'm on the best. It's really just changing your environment and your experiences, I think. Having said that, with the client work, I really have no problem generating ideas. With my personal work, that's where it can be more challenging. I remember when I first started, I would go to that park, Vasquez Rocks, and I would come home with like a memory card full of different images, and I'd have enough images to go for a daily post on Instagram for a week, if not more. It gets a lot harder, and I've talked to other toy photographers about this too. It does get harder, but I don't know if that's because the ideas were so bad back then that, and you really didn't care because you were just going out for the joy of shooting toys, which is beautiful in its own right. But I don't know if the ideas, I know I had a lot of crappy ideas back then, but I also know I had some good ones that hold up today. So, but yeah, it is definitely harder for me to generate ideas for my personal work right now than it used to be. But when it comes to the client work, I feel like the mission is clear, and it's a lot easier for me to create ideas and stories. Yeah.
And it's always, I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. I mean, I really, and that's one of the things that I enjoy about toy photography just generally, you know, it's just that whole playfulness, the whole thing, the coming up with the idea, realizing, and then actually thinking about how you can realize that idea as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've talked about this before. It's like, especially when you're first starting, it's like you can totally get carried away with the practical effects because like like a pet peeve of mine for me personally, but I see it done everywhere. Is like this is just an example. Like a stormtrooper will be just standing static, like on the ground. But for some reason, there's a burst of dirt and debris around him. There's no reason why there would be that, but it's just fun to create. So I would never tell somebody, don't do that because they're having fun. And ultimately, toy photography is about having fun. So there's so many ways to do it. Um, there's so many different things you could do. It's just like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you want to use AI for whatever you're creating in your toy photography, go for it.